husband's message at the first service, instead of me saying my mom got her hymnal at a confirmation or got it when she was singing in the choir, I said she got it for her first Holy Communion. Well, First Holy Communion is in the Catholic faith, and that's where I was raised. I was raised a Catholic, and for many, many reasons, I am deeply, deeply grateful for my Roman Catholic roots, for being raised in such a rich tradition of deep spirituality and of beautiful faith practices. Many of the things of our traditions have been melded together. We're so much alike. In fact, how many of you are originally raised Methodist? Okay. How about EUB? How about another Protestant denomination? Do we have any former Catholics besides me? Oh, we've got a few former Catholics. In our retirement, Jim and I have moved to Cedar Rapids. And there are a lot of churches in Cedar Rapids. But what we had decided to do was we were going to worship in the church that we could walk to. So we can walk to Trinity St. James United Methodist Church. It's only half a mile from our house. And we can also walk even a shorter distance to St. Patrick's Roman Catholic Church. So we switch, up until now, we switch off back and forth, going to both traditions. Because there is something about the connection of our rootedness in our faith traditions, and one of those is in the celebrating of feast days. We used to celebrate in the Catholic Church. One of the earliest books that I got was, for those former Catholics, was The Lives of the Saints. I used to love to pour through the stories of these people that lived hundreds of years ago. We even have some new saints now, saints from the United States of America, people that their lives and how they lived it and their struggles. I mean, there were real people that did real hard things, but shared one thing, and that was the trust. And I love to hear about those stories. Now, granted, I would go to Mass on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception long before I understood what the word conception meant. And I used to get the Feast of Assumption of Mary and the Ascension of Jesus Christ mixed up all the time. But nevertheless, these holy days were meaningful to me because they brought texture and they brought color to the practice of faith. And I've noticed in recent years a greater openness on the part of Protestants to some of the spiritual practices of the Catholic tradition. In fact, Pastor Lisa and I have been part of the Academy for Spiritual Formation, which really has much of its rootedness in the Catholic, the tradition that's thousands of years old. Just this past week, I've noticed how many churches, Protestant churches, have celebrated the Feast of St. Francis of Assisi, which was on October 4th, and with the blessing of animals. I'm sure that you have seen in many churches have the blessing of the animals. In the Catholic Church, however, we never celebrated World Communion Sunday. Now, my Protestant grandparents, and that's another piece of my history, is my mom was raised Methodist. She was a good, solid Methodist. In fact, she lived out 2 Timothy with the Spirit. One of the things God did not give us a spirit of cowardice, but rather a spirit of power and of love and of self-discipline. My mom, when she was in high school, was on the church council, the administrative board it was called. You know how you're always supposed to have a youth person on your church council and administrative boards, but often we don't. And if we did, they're in token, they hardly ever speak. But not my mom. This was in, I probably would say it was probably 1948. And there was and this is in South Norwalk, Connecticut, and a black church wanted to use the fellowship hall for an event. And there was a big, long discussion about whether this black church could use their fellowship hall. And it was about race. And my mom spoke up and said, I hear there's only one concern you have, and it's because they're black. We're supposed to be open to all people. 1948. Now, so she became a Catholic when she was 18, when she married my dad, and I was raised Catholic. And in those days, in South Norwalk, Connecticut, you could walk by the A&P grocery store, which was a chain of grocery stores on the East Coast, and in the window of the store was a help wanted sign. And it said, help wanted, Irish Catholics need not apply. That was the environment in which my mixed family was raised. Protestant grandparents, Catholic grandparents, and yet they lived out what I felt was God's vision of an ecumenical movement prior to Vatican II. But anyway, since my grandparents celebrated World Communion Sunday, I eventually stumbled upon a good explanation of why the Protestants celebrate this very important day that we get to celebrate. We celebrate World Communion Sunday on the first Sunday of October as a recollection of the universal church gathered at table in celebration of the presence of Jesus Christ through the Holy Spirit. When we gather at table, we celebrate a number of core components that the ecumenical community agrees are manifest in the Eucharist, which is the Greek word for giving thanks. Holy Communion is an act of God's grace. It is an act of thanks for all God has done in creating and saving. It's an act of remembering the life, the death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. It is the work of the Holy Spirit who prompts our remembering, our thanking, and our hoping. It is a family meal of nourishment, justice-seeking, and inclusion. It is an act that makes visible our future hope with God and all God's people. It's an act that makes visible our future hope with God and all God's people. And we are blessed every single day to get a glimpse of the kingdom on earth now. The whole church gathered as a table as one is a powerful image. And it was a powerful image growing up for me. Growing up with grandparents. That we would have a meal every Sunday, and around that table, hard things happened. Good things happened. We shared stories every Sunday in this mixed group of people that had worshiped in different places that day. Catholic Church and a Methodist church. Hard things happened around that table. It was at that table that I heard that my favorite uncle had just abandoned the family. But at that same table, we were nourished and were reminded that God loved us. Now my sisters, I come from a large family, and I'm the oldest, and there's 25 years difference between the youngest and the oldest. My sister Faith, my sister Bridget, my sister Colleen, good Irish names. They didn't get to experience Nanny and Poppy Weingartner's dining room table Thanksgiving or any holiday or any regular Sunday afternoon meal. But over the past couple of years, and especially since this past June, actually April, May, June, we had an extended unplanned extra stay in Connecticut. We just were going for Easter, but we ended up staying from before Easter to June 1st because my husband Jim was with me today, fractured his hip. So we got to stay a little bit longer. And we started creating Sunday afternoon dinners. In fact, it was the Sunday dinner that we had together. It was the day before Jim, actually, the day that Jim broke his hip. But we just were back in the East Coast for 3 weeks, and every Sunday that we were there, we had dinner together. Now, it wasn't around the big table in my grandmother's house. It wasn't even it was, one day it was in my sister's apartment, but it was in restaurants. It was the same kind of coming together. And that's what we're doing today. Maybe that's enough said and we should probably just get to our feast. But maybe not. Before we celebrate our feast together today, and celebrate it too quickly, I'd like to reflect for a moment on those who are too often not found at the table. Those who are not loved, those who are not valued and accepted by our churches, our communities, our world. I did a little research at the church before, when Sue actually messaged me while I was on vacation about coming here to fill the pulpit to maybe through December. So whenever Pastor Ken is able to come back. And so I looked up the Facebook page and I looked up the church and I noticed that the church council had updated your inclusion statement to name people. To name people that are welcome, gay and lesbian, people of different sexual orientations. I don't have it memorized, but you named it. You took the time, and I'm sure it was not easy. It's not always easy to name the places where we have not accepted. And it's not that we should feel constantly guilty or even be ashamed of our past, but to recognize when we have made a mistake, when we need to be forgiven, when we need reconciliation, and come to the table of reconciliation and forgiveness, and do the hard work that seemed hard at the time. But now, the way is open. The way is now open. We always need to be mindful of those who are not with us. When we save a place for the forgotten, the excluded, the poor, the marginalized, when we open the door, when we are willing to name all the alls that were not always accepted, when we're willing to do that, we are saving the place for Jesus. I think that was the message that my mom had for that administrative board back in 1948, was that when the church opened the door to another group of people that may cause problems in the community, may cause some tongue wagging and some difficulty, and maybe some people leaving the church over it, that indeed what they were doing was opening the door and the place for Jesus. We really don't have to think very long and hard to come up with your own memories, your own experiences, in your own life to think about the people that aren't included at the table. I know that Bishop Carcano and Bishop Trimble must have found it difficult when they were arrested on the border. I think that was about 8 years ago now. It seems like it was just yesterday. But when they were at the border of Mexico and they were arrested, our Bishop Trimble was arrested. Not everyone in Iowa was really happy with that, but that was making way. We really don't have to think very long and hard about it, but I think of a person I once encountered in San Francisco on one of my last business trips for the company that I was working for Infinite. And there were so many people that were hungry, begging on the streets, desperate people with anguished faces, waving signs that said, "I'm so hungry, won't you please help me?" However, one person in particular remains vivid in my memory. As I was walking down a street in the shops near Castro Street, where many gay and lesbian runaway youth take refuge, when I heard a quiet voice and turned to look back. And there on a low brick wall sat a young girl, a teenager. She looked up at me and spoke softly, so softly that I had to concentrate to hear her. "I'm sorry," she said. "I get confused. I didn't mean to bother you." She almost looked afraid that I would be angry at being distracted from my walk. "I didn't mean to bother you," she said. The memory of her has bothered me, or has been on my mind ever since. I think that's just one of the many reasons I'm grateful for churches like yours that are willing to make a statement. It's true that the world is far from perfect, and people often say the poor will always be with us, but I am encouraged by the words from 2 Timothy, that we have been given a spirit of courage and power. We're going to come to this table, and we're going to feast. And we're going to come and know that this is the heritage of our faith. It is our treasure. We've been entrusted with it, and it's instructed to rekindle this gift in every generation, including our own. It comes from both our Jewish and our Christian ancestors, just as Timothy received the gift of faith from his Jewish grandmother, Lois, and his Christian mother, Eunice. So we live our lives here, remembering the promises of God and the gifts of our ancestors. God's dream of love and grace for all of us. And then we pass it down to our children. Thanks be to God.